And I now invite and give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you very much. We're grateful to the UK presidency for organizing this meeting. We'd like to thank the Secretary General of the UN and his Most Reverend Archbishop of Canterbury and Madame Montserrat for their briefings. Now, peaceful resolution of conflicts is enshrined in the UN Charter as one of the fundamental goals, as well as the principle of work of this organization. At the same time, mediation has a real potential to be one of the most effective means of preventing escalation, resumption, and resolution of conflicts. There's no doubt that from the economic point of view, mediation has many benefits compared to other instruments in the UN arsenal, such as peacekeeping or Security Council sanctions, because it doesn't hinder development in any way. The UN, as the most authoritative and representative organization, has every opportunity to play a leading role in international mediation efforts. Such efforts should be undertaken in line with the provisions of the UN Charter, should take into account the founding principle of national responsibility while respecting independent sovereignty as well as the equality of states in international relations. Beside that, it's important to take into account the possible role of regional and sub-regional organizations in resolving disputes in their region, because it's a deep knowledge and understanding by mediators of all the nuances of conflicts makes it possible to more accurately analyze the situation, which means make objective and realistic proposals to narrow the differences between the parties. Using regional bodies and agreements for the purpose of peaceful resolution of conflicts is an important mechanism that is provided for by Article 33 of the UN Charter. Chapter 8, in turn, of the Charter encourages member states, first and foremost, to resolve local disputes with the help of these bodies and agreements even before they are transmitted to the Security Council. Lastly, certain regional organizations have acquired a significant experience in the area of mediation, for example, the African Union. The UN should rely on this experience and, where appropriate, approach the issues of mediation based on a sensible division of labor with regional and sub-regional structures. In this context, we note the significant potential of cooperation between the UN and such organizations as the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the Collective Security Treaty Organization. Russia itself takes part in mediation activity in the framework of international organizations, including in the CIS space. Now, at the same time, it's important to coordinate at the international level to avoid duplication of efforts, where different mediation efforts compete with each other and ultimately damage any chance of resolving a conflict. President, the Security Council, as a UN body with the primary responsibility for maintenance of international peace and security, is meant to play a key role in contributing to peaceful settlement of disputes, including through encouraging mediation and good offices. This is precisely why the Council attaches significant importance in supporting the efforts of the Secretary General, including by approving envoys and mediators that he proposes. It's important to understand that ultimately the most effective way of resolving conflicts is through direct dialogue between the conflicting sides between each other and political will in finding mutually acceptable solutions. The effectiveness of mediation, in turn, completely depends on consent of all sides to conflict and their buy-in into these international efforts and the impartiality of mediators. Unfortunately, we know many examples of the type of mediation that cannot be really called mediation. These are either attempts to monopolize mediation efforts or an attempt under the cover of mediation to achieve for their own benefit certain geopolitical goals. Now, the efforts of mediation is not some sort of universal art form. Rather, it's based on the knowledge of historical, cultural, and other specificities of each specific conflict. For each situation, a patient attempt to find a bespoke solution is necessary. Sometimes the success of mediation efforts cannot be measured in the short term. It's important to allow the parties to find their own solution, and this process might take a long time. In this connection, it's important to carefully select UN mediators based on objective criteria. At the same time, it's important to strictly adhere to a regional balance. The main goal of a mediator is to encourage the sides to resolve disputes and to identify the root causes that hinder a solution. Only this kind of approach can ensure a sturdy and long-term peace. Unilateral solutions cannot be imposed, nor should mediators give grounds to be suspected in being partial. Artificially imposing recipes is not only not effective, but in fact endangers the negotiating process and a fragile peace. In this connection, a critically important quality for UN mediators is not only simply to be impartial, but to maintain neutrality. This means that a reference to any kind of principle should not serve as to justify indulgence towards one side of the sides to a conflict. Otherwise, a mediator will not gain the trust of the conflicting sides. And by the way, we believe that it's important to make corrections to this effect into the UN guidance for effective mediation. Mr. President, most contemporary crises are interstate in character, and there's a fine line between mediation efforts, preventive diplomacy, and putting pressure on internal political processes. Unfortunately, in the Security Council, we often hear proposals which, in essence, amount to interference into the internal affairs of states and their constitutional procedures. It's no secret that often there's an attempt to use the Council to openly support one political camp. Can this in any way contribute to a resolution? This can only compound and drag out a conflict, undermine confidence in international cooperation and the UN. There are many examples of this, and they're well known. Russia is always in favor of resolving disputes through direct dialogue of sides. International experience in preventing and resolving conflicts clearly demonstrates that only impartial mediation that is based on bringing positions together, attempting to find areas of agreement and achieving mutually acceptable agreements has any chance of success. Thank you very much for your attention.
I thank the representative from the Russian Federation for his statement.